All right, let's talk about constraints. Constraints are a newer feature to Affinity Designer. These, in essence, allow you to kind of create scalable graphics for UI design in particular. It's pretty powerful. In this case, like navigation or text content, basic content, images and stuff, you can scale down to different sizes using specific parameters you can set in the constraints window here. To access this window, you'll want to go to View, Studio, Constraints. When it's opened, you'll see a default view that looks basically like this. So all the objects by default have this basic constraint setting, and all this means is this thing scales, going in height, going in width. So if you don't want it to scale, you can go ahead and set it like that, and you'll actually keep proportions as you see here. But I do have a few settings within this Navbar that are already preset. So what we'll do is dive deeper. You'll notice each group I created and named is considered a container, and that container represents this outer box of the constraint panel here. So think of it as the objects inside are this inner box, and each object is the symbol for that box. So in our case, the menu icon is that box, and our container is the navbar. So this overlying concept applies to basically any container with children, and you can apply constraints to, you know, how many levels deep you prefer. I like to keep it pretty simple just because scaling this can kind of get tricky as you go on. You'll find that you'll be kind of clicking and doing a lot of trial and error trying to get this thing to work. To me, I think it's a great solution for this problem, but it's also not quite there yet. I think it's not quite 100% intuitive yet. Let me walk you through it. At this current point, I have this navbar set up to scale, so any device I throw it on, it should work, assuming we want it to look like it does. Right now, I'm just going to go ahead and hit Command C on that and put it in our iPhone view. With any luck, it should scale down to the size we want. So we'll go ahead and grab that, pull this over, line it, make sure our coordinates are right. Great. So that's exactly what we want. We want the same functionality as on the iPad as on the iPhone. So what just happened here actually? Well, the navbar itself is a constraints group, and that's represented by this container here. If we were to set these and retry that, if I do just Command V here, it should paste right in place. So that's kind of a smart little tip if you're using that for the group itself and you want it to adapt to a specific device width. Inside the constraints group is the children, and you can think of these as this box like I said before. So you want these to fixate based on where they are on your design. So our menu icon in this example is fixated to the right, and we want it to stay there when we scale it. The same is true for the logo. So you'll notice the menu icon just has this. I turn these off because I don't want it to scale its size, and the same is true for the logo. Turn these off and turn that one on. So great. So that's the navbar. That's kind of simple, pretty basic, but also useful. Going one step further, I have an image here. I don't have this really set up to be fully constrained. I don't really need it to be. It can resize and be natural in its own current state. What I do have in play though is the lock children feature, and this is useful for the sake of just kind of having a cropped effect on the image. So when I scale it, the image doesn't actually scale, it just stays the same proportion, but we cut off the width. So I'm gonna go ahead and port that over to the design as well. And in this case, I probably will unlock that just so it's a little more proportion to the device. I do have it masked right now, so if you look at the feature image, it's actually within an actual shape. Let me open this one here. The shape itself is right here, and it's this whole, it's like a purple background, but I'm gonna go ahead and lock the children again and then just pull that over so we have a nice clean rectangle there. Increase that size just a bit. Fix that. Okay, great. So next I have what would be kind of like an article. I have me as just an author, my little thumbnail there, and new title and some lorem ipsum copy. I have this preset by default because it took me a little bit to get right, but at this stage, this stuff should transcend down. They are two different groups. So I have author, which is just this block, my name and the thumbnail, and the content pane, which is like this white box that's overlaying the image, the title, and the content. So if I select both and scale down, you'll see it kind of in action. It's not 100% perfect, but I think it captures the idea. So we could even, just go ahead and port that over, but I'll explain what's going on here real quick first. A common gotcha, I think, with this is the type of text tool you use. In my past, I've found best luck with the frame text tool, since it can go full width like this and just stay that width. If you use the artistic text tool, you're running the risk of just scaling the text, and you can't get around that with constraints. If you're planning to use constraints, I would stick with the text frame tool. So for all your text, even my name here is in a text frame. So that's something to keep in mind, because as you scale, you'll want that to kind of wrap like it is. On top of that, you'll notice that the text itself, I have fixated to the top, and I want it to scale. So I've got these arrows active. The same is true for the title. So everything's aligned to the element on top of itself. And then the author, being its own constraints group, is doing the same, much similar thing. But in this case, I don't want this image to scale. I just want it to kind of float with the design as we transcend down. So you notice I only do the top and bottom, and then the height as well. The same is true for the text below my name. So if we were just to take this and paste it over here, it should paste with that relative positioning, since we had the outside parameter set, but I want to adjust it just a bit to be to the edge. So we have a little more room to work with, and probably just move this down by hand, which isn't a big deal. This one will probably cut down the size, maybe something like so. One thing I didn't get, I need to move everything up. Oops. Let's double check we have that box. There it is. Little offset box. It should be above the image. Like that. And then this should be above that. So let's try this. There we go. I'm going to move the author down a little bit, and these as well. So you'll notice there's still some tweaking to do, but in theory, this is, set up to work and be constrained, just given your parameters here. So if you ever needed to adjust things further, you can just go ahead and click and drag. Obviously, this is just an example, so you can go deeper and do a better job than I did here, but the constraints tool can be very powerful. It can also be kind of a nuisance. So like I said before, I wouldn't go too deep with these. You can have a container within a constraints group and make another constraint inside of that, have objects fixated and adjust it accordingly. That's up to you if that's something you want to add to your design. To me, it's another layer of problematic issues that could arise. So to each his own. That's a quick overview of constraints. I hope it has helped you. And for your UI design, it's definitely a valuable tool.